Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we will have the first 2 hours dedicated to this designer perspective, and then in the second slot, the last 2 hours, we will do the second assignment. That will happen here, so you should be able to complete it, I think, today. But then you will have time until next week to upload the report, that in this case will be a group report, so just one upload for each group, but we will see the details the next 2 hours. So let's start with the designer perspective. So we move from the end user to the designer, as we mentioned last time, and this is the outline for today. So we will try to understand what we mean with designing for the good. Then we will see in more detail some digital attention heuristics that you will use in the second assignment. And finally, I will show you one of our recent work in developing a tool to support designers while prototyping, so at the design stage. So last time we discussed in detail the end user perspective. We started by analyzing contemporary digital self-control tools, looking at their characteristics and different intervention strategies: block removal, self-tracking, goal advancement, reward punish. But we also discovered several gaps in this perspective. The first main gap is the self-monitoring nature of contemporary digital self-control tools, and this is clearly not effective in the long term because the user needs to be motivated in using these tools continuously. And consequently, there is the second big gap, that is the short-term effectiveness. This kind of support for the end users are not effective in the long term because mainly they don't promote the formation of new habits. They also focus on single devices, and they mainly focus on screen time, which is a metric that we can measure but is typically not sufficient to capture all the nuances of the digital well-being domain. And finally, we discovered this big theoretical gap, and we tried to mention some theories that could be used, that are going to be used to solve this theoretical gap. Anyway, even if we can design maybe smarter interventions, maybe interventions that are more theoretically grounded, as we tried in our previous works, this doesn't solve the contradiction, the underlying contradiction of the need of having these tools, right? So the question is, why not having a good technology by design? So there is the need, probably, at least in my opinion, to go beyond this kind of perspective, the end user perspective. And of course, more radical changes would offer benefits to users. Because right now, digital well-being has traditionally been considered an end user responsibility, but as we have seen in one of the papers in the reading panels, I think that also technology companies are responsible of designing a better technology. So promoting digital well-being should be a responsibility of tech companies too. And there is obviously contradictions and trade-offs to explore, as we discussed during the panels. There is this attention economy. There are economic interests in this, so it's really difficult to promote this digital well-being by design. But there are some attempts in the literature that try to overcome and close this gap. So again, the goal is designing for the digital well-being. So instead of blocking interactions through an external tool like a digital self-control tool, HCI researchers are trying to also redesign the internal mechanisms used by these platforms. So here, for example, is a study by Lukov and colleagues that together with the users in a sort of co-design exercise tried to redesign the YouTube interface in a way that the platform make users more in control of the time they spend on the YouTube website or mobile application. So designing for digital well-being clearly requires the usage of human-centered design processes, and also there is the need of developing and promoting some guidelines for designing and also for evaluating this kind of interfaces for the digital well-being. So designing for the good. It's not a novel concept, and we will briefly mention some old framework that are still valid today, like positive design and value-sensitive design, before looking at heuristics specifically focused on our domain of the attention. So integrating well-being into the design is not a novel idea, and perhaps the end of the spectrum here is the concept of non-design that is being proposed by Baumer and Silberman in 2011. And this kind of assumption challenges the assumption that technological interventions are always the solution. So through non-design, the authors ask designers to reason about three main questions before designing something that is technological. And so the first question is, could the technology be replaced by an equally viable low-tech or non-technological approach to the situation? If yes, probably designing something that is digital is not the best solution possible. Second question, does a technological intervention result in more trouble or harm than the situation it's meant to address? So if the tool is introducing new problems, we should reason about the need of designing or non-designing the solution. And the final question is, does the technology solve a computationally tractable transformation of a problem rather than the problem itself? So if it's just moving the problem from the offline world to the online world, but the problem is still there, then maybe it's better not to design at all the technology. What are your thoughts with this? What do you think of this non-design approach? Yes?
Maybe not really my opinion, but I already heard a bit about this concept with a sort of movement called low-tech.
Okay.
Of course, is the opposite of high-tech.
Yes.
It's kind of have this idea of solving problems by trying to use non-technology or trying to lower, especially the boundaries. So like elder people, young people, poor people that can afford some device can still participate in the social activities if they don't have. So it was more like a design choice based on broader range of people that could participate.
Okay.
So I kind of
Yes, it's clearly related to this. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this? Yes?
I just think that the risk to follow this approach is to prevent all the consequences of all the digital platforms and technologies that we want to design. And this is not always possible, and during the design and during the implementation of these technologies, there are even more risks than we thought at the beginning. So
Yes, yes, this is clearly at the end of the spectrum, of course. Okay, so again, as your colleague said, non-design is not always possible, and so we need to design for the good, right? And the concept of integrating well-being in general into technology design, again, is not novel, and it has been a topic of discussion among designers and also researchers for several years. For example, there is this positive design framework that emphasizes creating products and user experiences that enhance the quality of life of the users. So this framework encourages designers to consider the broader impact of their interfaces on individuals, but also on society, on community. And there is also the value-sensitive design. Someone mentioned it last time. And this focuses on incorporating human values and ethical considerations directly within the design process. And these are the steps to follow, the general steps to follow value-sensitive design. So the first step is establish the user values. The second one is connect the design to the values. Then you should design with those values in mind. And then you should try to confirm that the design has succeeded in capturing this kind of values. So there is also a final evaluation to close this loop. Any of you is using value-sensitive design in your research? No.
I did for a project.
Okay.
My master's degree.
And how was the experience, the process?
It was based on, it was in a course called Responsible Artificial Intelligence. So the focus was not on human interaction. Then it was more on knowing how AI works and in fact designing a system that use AI while also taking into consideration the values of the involved people. It was interesting experience.
Okay. And of course, you can refer to the papers if you want to try to apply these frameworks to your research. There are also a lot of guidelines online. And finally, perhaps one of the older frameworks that is more relevant for this course is the Well-being Supporting Design Toolkit. It's a toolkit for technology makers that are interested in applying well-being psychology to design. And it includes many things, including guidelines and design strategies for supporting, again, psychological well-being in user experience, and also a scale that is used to encourage designers in thinking about different spheres related to the interaction between the user and the technology. And we will see a video in a minute explaining what are these different spheres. So here there is the website. Let me close this. Okay. This is the website with all the material included in this toolkit. So for example, there are design cards that contains different indication on how to support psychological well-being via design. It is based on the self-determination theory that we discovered last time. So there is a brief introduction on the 3 basic psychological constructs included in the theory. The first one is autonomy. And there are some characteristics, some hints to support autonomy into your design. So these are the characteristics of autonomy support. So meaningful choices, absence of pressure, clear rationale. They are characteristics that you should support in your design if you want to support autonomy. And there are also some practical examples of technology that support autonomy in this case. So they are quite generic, but anyway, mobile phones allow users to decide if, when, and how they want to receive calls and notifications. So it's a way to support user autonomy. Then there are dark patterns related to notifications, but that's another story. Screen readers provide a non-visual way to access internet content for users with low vision. Then there is competence. So competence is the need to feel capable and effective, the need for growth and mastery. So learning something while using your technology. And here characteristics span from usable and accessible to forgiving of mistakes to supports experimentation and so on. So some examples. By adjusting difficulty level to player performance, video games provide ongoing competence satisfactions. Learning apps can, of course, increase competence by supporting gradual mastery of new knowledge and skills. And finally, there is the third construct, relatedness, the need to feel connected to others, to feel cared for, and to care for others. And here are the characteristics: opportunities for supporting others and being supported, support for empathy, and so on. Examples: meetup platforms help people with shared interests to connect offline. Okay. Then there are the spheres, but we will see a video in a minute from the authors. And finally, there are some, heuristics. So what are heuristics? Yes?
Maybe it is like a kind of simple rule that you use?
Yes, a sort of guideline. In this case, a design guideline, okay? And you will apply heuristics in the second assignment. But anyway, these are the heuristics proposed by this toolkit. They are also divided into the 3 psychological constructs. So first there are the heuristics to support autonomy, then heuristics to support competence, and then relatedness. And for just some examples, the first one is apply best practices for accessibility. Ensure that technology can be accessed by all intended users. And for each heuristic, there are also some practical strategies to follow. So to apply this heuristic, you should comply with accessibility standards and also test with a range of users and in a variety of contexts. Then let's see an example from the second category, support competence, for example. Yes. This one is really related to our course, is still on the autonomy sphere. Support mindful attention. Designed to support volitional experiences of focus, mindful awareness, and attention. Some strategies: simplify the interface to support focus. Minimize interruptions. So this is clearly related to what we see also about dark patterns, and we will discover this in an hour or so. We also decided to include this heuristic in the set of digital attention heuristics that you will try to apply in the second assignment. But again, we will see them in a moment. Other examples? Yes, this one is related to relatedness. Support a sense of meaningful connection to others. Support experiences of warm connection and closeness to others. Some strategies: ensure technology-mediated interactions with others are seamless. Provide opportunities to connect with others, offline as well, and so on. So these are validated guidelines that can be applied if you want to support psychological well-being in terms of the self-determination theory in your product, in your interface. And as I've said before, this is a toolkit, so there are also other tools here. For example, there is a workshop that you can follow and conduct. There is a Miro template, and within the workshop, there is a really cool explanation of 5 different spheres that should be considered when designing a technology for the good. And so instead of repeating this myself, I will play the video if I can. Template is loading. Yes. So this video introduces these 5 spheres, and then there are some tools to apply these spheres to your design process. Let's see if it works. No. We don't have audio here, probably.
Lot about the 3 basic psychological needs. Now, we've been talking a lot about the 3 basic psychological needs, but if you've been looking at the card set, you might be wondering what's with the other 6 cards. So now we're going to talk about those, the spheres of technology experience in which basic psychological needs can be met. You may have noticed that some examples might be really low granularity, like examples to do with feeling frustrated by an interface control. Others might be really high-level things to do with how a technology impacts our sense of autonomy in our lives overall. Think of a self-driving car for someone who's vision impaired. Another reason it's important to get these spheres straight is that you can have need satisfaction and need frustration happening differently at different levels simultaneously. The need to be much more specific about where need satisfaction was occurring led my colleagues and I to develop the 6 spheres of technology experience, 4 of which, the yellow ones here, break down the user experience. With the interface, we're thinking about things like the navigation, controls, and interaction elements, and the extent to which those support feelings of fulfillment of psychological needs. Especially autonomy and competence. Those 2 are probably the most important at that level. Positive outcomes of need satisfaction within this sphere are things like user satisfaction, high usability scores, and sustained engagement with the technology. The task sphere is focusing in on the tasks that a technology is designed to support. So in the example of a fitness app, a task might be step tracking. The interface might be really great and intuitive, but when it comes to the task of step counting, I might feel really incompetent because this technology is telling me I need to do 10,000 steps a day, and that is not realistic for me. So you can see how need satisfaction at this task level can be different to the need satisfactions going on at the interface level. Tasks generally contribute toward an overall behavior, and that's the behavior sphere. In our fitness app example, the overall behavior could be said to be exercise. So the question is, to what extent does the app improve need satisfaction in the experience of exercise? I might love the interface and engage in the tasks, but is this improving my sense of competence around doing exercise regularly? So need fulfillment at this level can have many positive outcomes. For example, more engagement with the behavior, more satisfaction with the behavior, and more behavior-specific outcomes. In the fitness app example, this might be health outcomes like symptom control, weight loss, healthier living, depending on your context. Finally, we have the life sphere. How many people think about how a technology experience will impact a user's life overall? To be fair, many technologies wouldn't or shouldn't expect to have a measurable impact on somebody's life overall. I mean, an egg timer? It could hardly make a meaningful change in someone's sense of relatedness in their life. But a mindfulness app, that might. Certainly, any technology that wants to show it doesn't cause harm will be needing to measure need satisfaction at the life level. As if you take games as an example, you might get a game that satisfies needs loads at the interface level and at the task levels. Autonomy and competence are running high. But if the problem is addiction, it's at the life level that relationships may be being degraded or a sense of control is being lost. Thinking at the life level opens you up to think big about the kind of impact your technology can be having on somebody's life. But it can actually be taken even bigger. There's increasing pressure from consumers, from governments, and even from within the industry itself to think more carefully about the wider impacts our technologies are having on society and the planet. Society includes all the non-users as well as the users, so the non-user experience, if you will. That can mean friends and family, but also indirect effects on communities, employment, democracy. There are some emerging methods for considering this kind of impact at this level, but it's not something we have time to get into today. However, if you're interested, at positivecomputing.org, we do have a list of pointers to head you in the right direction. We've gone as big as we're going to get, but now let's pull back a bit. The adoption sphere covers an area that occurs before technology is even in use, before it has a user. This is when it has prospective users. So we can even think about need satisfaction in that time before a technology is adopted. In a nutshell, it has to do largely with the way users anticipate a product will support their autonomy, their competence, and relatedness. This has a lot to do with the information they get about the product in advance. But also, their eventual sustained uptake of the technology has to do with how autonomous their motivation is for adopting it. When your boss forces you to use a technology, you're a lot less likely to engage with it fully compared to something you just really want to do, either because it's fun or interesting, or because you're convinced it strongly aligns with your goals and values. It's going to help you achieve something that's meaningful to you.
Okay.
All right.
So, we have seen these different spheres, these different lenses that can be used to measure and support the user satisfaction with a technology. And actually, the toolkit includes tools and scales to measure this satisfaction in the different lenses. Okay. So this is clearly a relevant toolkit, and you can try to reuse it in your research if you want and if it's appropriate for your studies. But it talks about well-being in general, right? So it's really big. In our recent work, we tried to focus explicitly on the topics that we discussed in this course. And we conducted a systematic literature review to define a list of heuristics to support the time and the attention of the user by design. Okay. So again, heuristics are general principles, or also they are also called rule of thumbs that can guide a design decision, right? At the same time, heuristics can also be used to evaluate something, that a decision that has already been made. So heuristics can be used both for designing and for evaluating a design. And we will use them for evaluating an interface in the second assignment. We also categorized these heuristics in terms of the self-determination theory. And we have seen the details of the theory last time, so I don't want to repeat myself. And basically, we developed 8 heuristics categorized under, again, autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And for each heuristic, we also extracted design strategies and concrete examples. So the first category is support autonomy. And again, autonomy is important because it's also at the heart of many usability guidelines. And so it's really important to support this basic psychological need in the design process. So let's see a brief overview of the 8 heuristics. The first one is support mindful attention and sense of agency. And this is extracted from the example that I showed before. So designed to support experiences of focus, mindful awareness and attention, breaking the link between users' time spent or interactions and the profit. So trying to break the link of the attention economy. And here are some strategies. Simplify the interface to support focus and avoid distractions. Minimize distractions, help people reclaim and retain autonomy over their attention. Provide users with tools for supporting self-regulation, like integrated digital self-control tools. Use positive friction mechanisms, like confirmation dialogues, pop-ups, to help users reflect on their usage behaviors, to prevent errors, promote critical thought, and healthier digital habit. So clearly these are all strategies and examples extracted from the literature. And here I've listed some positive examples, so some examples of digital interface that in a way already support this heuristic. And the first one, we mentioned them last time. Some digital platform today integrate some digital self-control tool, right? So in YouTube, on Android devices, you can see your usage data, you can set up some usage timers. So this is clearly a good example of supporting this strategy. And it's important because these tools are integrated within the platform. They are not external application. Yes, another example, the focus mode on Microsoft Word in this case. So if you activate this setting on Word, you eliminate distractions, so you can focus on your document. Basically, it reduces the menus that you are seeing in your page, and you can really focus on the text. And this is an example from Netflix. I don't know if this pop-up is still there, but anyway, when you watch multiple episodes, there was this pop-up that asked the user, are you still watching? And the user can decide, yes, continue watching, or the user can close the application. So it's an example of a positive friction mechanism. Okay, heuristic number 2, always about autonomy. Support informed usage sessions. So provide the user with the information necessary for making choices and for deciding whether it's worth starting or continuing a session, or if maybe it's better to stop. So making sure to adopt a transparent design that is clear about intentions and honest in actions. So it's about transparency. And here are some strategies. So provide a preview of the status of the new content, the new content that is available. Allow users to preview what would happen if they made a particular choice. Give an indication of how much time is needed to perform something on the interface, to consume a content, for example, so that the user can decide if it's worth opening the content or not. Prevent redirection. Like, for example, avoid recapture notifications that are sent just to capture your attention and to redirect you to another app. Ensure that advertisements are relevant, transparent, and clearly distinguishable from other content. And finally, yes, this is related to one of the attention capture dark patterns we have seen last time. Ensure that users can easily find the option to log out, unsubscribe, or delete an account. Some examples. This is from Medium, I think. And in Medium, but also on other websites, there is an estimation of the time you need to read the article. And it's clearly related to this heuristic. It gives you some information. You can decide if you have time to read the content or no, and so on. This is the account deletion on Mastodon, a decentralized social media that, compared to the process in Facebook for deleting an account, is quite straightforward. You can delete your account, all your data, with one click. And we have seen last time how difficult it is to make this operation on Facebook, for example. And finally, this is acceptable ads. It's an advertisement framework that gives you some guidelines on how to structure your advertisements in your page, in your applications, with some transparency obligations. So if you want to follow this framework, you should follow specific guidelines enforcing transparency in the advertisements. Number 3, promote content quality and instrumental use. Adopt designs that allow users to maximize the overall quality of time spent rather than the quantity. And this can be done by prioritizing instrumental use. So a use that is goal-directed, that is is driven by the information that the user needs, rather than ritualistic use like mindless scrolling. Okay. Some strategies. The first one is to allow users to make some plans to guide the usage session, so that the user can make some kind of investment that persists beyond the isolated usage sessions. So allowing users to plan for the next session. So the next session will be guided by this plan. Let the user switch between low and high control interfaces, like switching between an explore mode and a focus mode. We have seen an example from a paper about SwitchTube. They try to redesign the YouTube interface, dividing it into two different parts. The explore mode, when you just want to explore some recommendations, and the focus mode with just the search bar in the middle when you have a clear goal for your session. Okay, some examples. I don't think that this social media is still a good example to I need to upload these slides, but anyway, on Twitter, I don't know if it's the same on X, but you can have two different tabs, for you and following. And if you look at the following tab, you just see the posts from people that you are following without any recommendations. So in a way, it can be considered a good example of Some other examples, I think the more relevant is this one, YouTube playlists. So on YouTube, like with the Watch Later playlist, you can mark some videos, put them into this playlist to watch later. So you plan a future usage session. Number 4, support personalization. Ensure that users can understand and personalize the digital environment they are interacting with to better satisfy their goals, values, and digital well-being in general. So personalization. Some tailored strategies. Offer options for users to personalize or disable a design or functionality which may be perceived as distractive or attention capture. So there is the possibility of, like in SwitchTube, of supporting users into disabling some functionality, some design, some elements of the user interface to support this heuristic. Give users tools for giving feedback on attention capture content, strategies and interaction modalities adopted by the platform. So we can envision tools to let the user signal some attention capture dark pattern in an interface. And here are some examples. We mentioned it probably in the first lesson, during which we discussed about this never-ending autoplay pattern. In YouTube, there is a slider below each video through which you can easily disable this functionality. And this can be a good example. Okay. Yes, here is in, I think, Mastodon, but I'm not sure. You can activate this slow mode and you can hide timeline updates behind a click instead of an automatic scrolling. So to update the content of the newsfeed, you need to click. So an interaction that is more conscious. So it should prevent mindless scrolling. This is, I think, always on Mastodon. You can disable specific gestures in this case. You can also disable the pull to refresh mechanism, for example. And this prevents other kind of patterns like the casino pull to refresh pattern that we have seen in the first lecture. And finally, in YouTube, there is this scheduled digest possibility. So you can pack all your notifications in a daily digest, for example. So you receive one single container, I don't know how to say it, a pack of different notifications once a day instead of receiving them instantly. And this is clearly, this can be activated by the user, so it's a personalization option. Then we have two heuristics about competence. So feeling capable and effective, learning something with the technology. And the first one is tailor usage to users and context. Ensure the level of complexity or challenge required to start, perform, or end a usage session with a digital service is appropriate for the user and for the context. Let's see some examples to clarify it. First strategy, offer different levels of control for instrumental and habitual use. So by providing users with higher control mechanism when they have a specific intention in mind and lower control ones when they have a non-specific intention. We can also try to change the user interface based on prediction models. Like if we know that the user is experiencing some self-control issue, we could decide to present them with a search-only interface. Yes, and in general, trying to break down big tasks into smaller parts. Let's see some examples. There is just one example here, probably. Yes, and it's about YouTube Kids. So YouTube Kids is a dedicated version of YouTube for children, right? With different constraints. So you can only see some videos. There are restrictions that can be personalized by parents and so on. So there is a dedicated version of YouTube that is tailored to children. Heuristic number 6, offer relevant digital well-being feedback. So provide feedback from the interface to the user that informs the user about, for example, digital well-being improvements or negative behaviors. So something more proactive from the interface to the user. Okay. These are the strategies, like the second one, promote instrumental use and reduce temptations to prolong usage session. For example, by encouraging users to move on when their original purpose is achieved. So if the user has an instrumental goal and the user is able to satisfy this goal in a usage session, we should say to the user, okay, you have reached your goal, maybe it's time to close the smartphone. Some examples. Forest, yes, okay. This is an example from Gmail. In the rare case you can read all your emails and delete all of them. There is this super screen that says you have finished, nothing in primary, and there is an image of a person reading a book, so it probably tells you maybe it's time to open a book instead of using the smartphone. There is also, yes, this is another example from a digital self-control tool integrated with iOS in this case. But this is interesting because you receive this screen time report every week, and this report compares your screen time with the past weeks. So you can have this sort of tracking of your progress. So it's, I think, useful feedback. And finally, we have two heuristics about relatedness. The first one is support meaningful connections. So support experience of meaningful and fair connection to others, respecting one's preferences and vulnerabilities and those of others. And here are the strategies. So basically, we need to ensure that users have, for example, the possibility to avoid social comparison with others if they want. And in general, it's important to, yes, support this kind of meaningful connection experiences. And here are some examples. On Instagram, for example, you can hide the like count, and this allows you to avoid this sort of social comparison with others. And also Mastodon, these settings that are under the well-being, again, category, you can hide quantitative statistics on posts, like number of likes and so on. And finally, heuristic number 8, support real-world connection. So provide tools that facilitate real-world experiences, so offline, and connections that go or may go beyond the screen. Some strategies: ensure that users can keep their attention in the real world, avoid social problems like pubbing, that is when we use the smartphone when we are with others, and so on. Give more importance to posts, comments, and interactions from close ties. And here are some examples. Yes, the first example is a feature that you can activate on some kind of phones. If you flip your phone, it automatically goes in silent mode and it blocks all the notifications so that you can socially interact with others. And again, there is the example from Twitter. The following tab just displays posts from people you follow without mixing them with recommendations. Okay. Any questions about these heuristics? Of course, these were examples that we found in contemporary applications, but I think we can do better, right? So these are probably some starting points to understand the heuristics, but then the heuristics could be potentially implemented in many different ways. Okay, if you don't have any questions, the last part of this set of slides, then we will move to the heuristic evaluation part, is actually an example of a recent work in which we try to develop some digital support for the designer. So heuristics can be used offline, both at to inspire new designs and also to evaluate interfaces. This is instead a tool that can be used by the designer while the designer is prototyping something. And it's a Figma plugin. I think all of you already know what is Figma. I don't know. No? Basically, Figma is online platform to prototype user interfaces. So there is the online version and also the application. And this is Figma. You can open a new design file. Apparently, I don't have the Pro account. They changed something. Maybe I need to create a draft. Somewhere there is the possibility of creating a draft. Yes. Yes. And basically here you design your UI, your user interface. So you can insert a new frame, for example, for an iPhone 16. And within this frame you basically design your interface with your components, images, buttons, and these prototypes can also be interactive, so you can simulate the application. If I click on a button, I move to another page. So a tool for visual prototyping. And within this tool we developed a plugin to support designer in supporting digital well-being. So basically the idea is the designer is prototyping something, the plugin takes a screenshot of the interface, it sends this screenshot to a large language model, asking the model to identify potential problems in terms of attention capture damaging patterns. And then if there are patterns, these patterns are identified directly in the interface with some suggestions to improve and avoid them. You can also try it if you want. There is this public repository in which there is the source code. You can download it. Then you need to compile the prototype, and then from Figma you can import the plugin and you can use it. So let's try it. So we have prepared this this project in Figma, in which we included some design of contemporary applications. Like this one basically is yeah, there is the smartphone with some notifications, but we also have some social media, some settings page, and so on. So I can open the plugins, digital lens. Okay. The first time you open it, it asks you for an API key. We use OpenAI, so you should have an OpenAI key, and you should create it from your console and then pass it here. It's not expensive. You can buy some credits and use them for this if you want. And then you select the interface, in this case this page, and you can scan the interface. So the plugin is taking the screenshot, sending it to the LLM, and then it display the feedback from the LLM directly within Figma. So for example, here the plugin identified two different attention capture patterns, like these guides, ads, and recommendations. Here there is the sponsored page, the sponsored content that is mixed with the other elements. So it also explains to you why the plugin identified this pattern. So the post is marked as sponsored but designed to look like regular content. This can mislead users into engaging with advertisement, thinking they are normal posts, and blah blah blah. And then the important thing is that the plugin also suggests you some alternatives. So instead of this, you could adopt a clear ad labeling and ensure that sponsored content is clearly labeled with a distinct background color or borders and a prominent ad label. Or ad transparency. Provide users with an option to learn why they are seeing a particular ad and allow them to manage their ad preferences. So now we don't have time to modify the design, but if you change this, you remove maybe the sponsored label, and you change the sponsored label to be bigger and with a background color, then probably this will not be detected. And then there is also the casino pull to refresh, identified by this icon here. And again, there are some alternatives, like schedule content updates. Automatically update the feed at regular intervals, such as every 10 minutes, and inform users of the next update time. This is a possible alternative suggested by the plugin. And it's quite it can be used with whatever interface, right? So I can change the interface and this plugin still works. Let's see here in settings if the plugin identifies something. No, there are no problems here. And so the plugin didn't detect any damaging patterns in the screen. So this is an example of work that is trying to support designers during the design process. Any questions? Okay, yes?
When we register on the Figma website,
Yes.
should we choose the designer option to work something there?
What do you mean with designer option?
I mean, in the first time we register there.
Yes,
and
I think there.
asking questions.
Yes, I think it's not important. It's just a survey from Figma, but it's not important. But I think that there is the possibility of having the pro account by registering as a student. Maybe if you use your PhD student email, you can get a pro account in Figma. I'm not sure, but I think that or maybe you can register and then apply for a pro account here in Figma/education. Anyway, one of the options for the last assignment, probably the easiest one, will be to develop a prototype in Figma. Okay, so start thinking about creating an account if you want to explore this possibility. Okay. Let's go back to the second part of this theoretical lesson. It is not directly related to the well-being domain, to the digital well-being domain. It's actually a tool very popular in HCI for evaluating user interfaces. And you will use this tool to apply the digital attention heuristics that we have just seen. So we talk about heuristic evaluation. First of all, let's speak about evaluation in general from an HCI perspective. So what is evaluation in HCI? Basically, our aim is to test three things: the usability, the functionality, and the acceptability of an interactive system. And this evaluation can be specified in different ways. There are different strategies to evaluate in HCI according to the design stage, for example. I don't know if you are familiar with HCI processes, but we typically start designing something in low fidelity, like with a paper-based mockup, and then we move to medium fidelity with some interactive prototype, like in Figma, and finally we implement the application. And it's an iterative cycle, and for each step there is a proper evaluation technique. And the idea is always to identify and correct problems as soon as possible. Very briefly, there are multiple approaches here. First of all, we can have evaluation in the lab, so lab studies. We can have evaluations in the field, in the wild studies. We can have evaluations that involve end users, like with interviews, observations, and so on. But we can also have methods based on expert evaluation. So some experts that test some applications, some interface, and give their feedback. And this is the case of heuristic evaluation. So you will act as experts evaluating something against the heuristics that we have just seen. So lab studies are quite easy. So users are taken out of their normal environment to take part in a controlled test. So the important thing is here is the controlled part. In the lab you can control the environment, and that's why you clearly have some advantages and some disadvantages. So you can control the environment, so this means that you can also simulate, for example, dangerous environments. Before sending some astronauts in the space, maybe it's better to test the interface of the spaceship in the lab, right? So it's suitable for specific tasks within a system. Of course, in the lab you are lacking the context, so there is this unnatural situation also for the user. So the user knows that you are watching him or her, and this can, of course, create biases. So it's not suitable for all the tasks. So lab studies are typically adopted in the early stages of design. And then you have field studies. So you ask your users to maybe install an application and try it for 2 weeks. You collect some data and you make some comparison, some analysis, and so on. So it's open nature. You have the real context, the real environment for the user, but at the same time you have a low degree of control. So something can fail. Maybe the application will crash and you lose all your data. And there are also higher costs, of course, and typically also a longer duration. And then we have expert evaluations, our focus today. So evaluation may be based on expert evaluation, and this is useful to identify any areas that are likely to cause problems in terms of known principles. So before testing the application with the users, let's solve the easy to solve problems. We don't need the users, we just need 2 to 3 experts to solve this kind of problems. This kind of evaluations can be used at any stage in the development process. It's relatively cheap. You are not forced to recruit people. That is the very difficult part in HCI. Of course, you cannot assess the actual use of the system with the target population, and this is clearly a disadvantage. And heuristic evaluation is a kind of expert evaluation, so experts check potential issues on your design by referring to a set of heuristics, a set of guidelines. This kind of evaluation is also called design critique, because experts are going to critique in a constructive way your design. And it can be used before user testing, for example, again, to solve the easy to solve problems. Maybe before redesigning something, to generate evidence for problems that are known. Maybe you are receiving very bad reviews on the Play Store on your application. Let's check these reviews with experts to see if they are relevant or not, and so on. So this method was developed by Jakob Nielsen, and it's a structured design technique. Originally in general, it uses a set of very simple and general heuristics. So there are heuristics proposed by Nielsen to evaluate the usability of an interface. And this is a very common method in HCI and user experience design. But you can, of course, try to apply your own heuristics if you want. Typically, this evaluation is executed by a small group of experts. 3 to 5 is the magic number. And again, the original goal was to find usability problems in a design. We will specify this in finding digital well-being problems in our case. So this is the basic idea, the basic steps. You need to either use a set of heuristics or define your own heuristics to be used in the evaluation. Then you give those heuristics to a group of experts. And each expert individually will use the heuristics to look for problems in the design. So experts first work independently. So each expert will find different problems. And at the end, experts share their findings and try to reach an agreement. So findings are analyzed, aggregated, ranked, and then this results in a report for the design team that can use the report and the problems identified by the experts to improve the design. So the goal is to find problems. we have seen positive examples. In the second assignment, you will try to spot violations, so negative examples. So something that doesn't meet the heuristic. Again, Nielsen proposed 10 heuristic rules. Oops. But again, we will apply our own heuristics. Okay. More in detail, the steps. The first step is typically give some training to the evaluators. This is because the application is typically designed for a specific domain. Maybe it's a mobile application for doctors or for astronauts. I don't know. And you ask your experts to evaluate this interface, but experts are experts in HCI. They are not experts in your domain. So you need to give some information to allow the experts to interact with the technology. Maybe by explaining some terminology or some process included in the app. Then there is the individual evaluation. And during the evaluation, the expert try to find problems, and each expert also uses a severity rating. So each expert assign a severity rate to each problem, and we will see a scale to be used. And then finally, there is the debriefing phase, aggregation of the individual results, and the expert try to reach an agreement. Okay, let's focus on the evaluation part. First of all, you should have a set of tasks, right? So the design team typically define 3 to 5 tasks to be performed on the application, and these tasks will be used to guide the evaluation of the experts. For each task, the evaluator should step through the design several times, looking at the different UI elements. And this can be done on the real design, but also on prototypes. And typically, each expert perform 2 different, try to re-perform the tasks twice. The first one, the expert get a general feeling for the interaction flow and general scope, and then in re-performing the task, the expert can focus on specific UI elements, like buttons and images and so on. And heuristics are used as a reminder of things to look for. Okay, session duration is normally 1 hour, 2 hours, it depends. And then these problems should be structured in a very specific way. So for each violation, you should report which is the heuristic violated, why, where in the UI. It's clearly not a subjective comment, but you should reference to a known principle, and also a severity rating. But I will provide you with a template. Where can we find problems in a UI in terms of usability? Then this may differ in our domain. So we can have usability problems in a single location in the UI, maybe a button. The contrast between the text within the button and the background color is low and it's not readable. You can have usability problems in 2 or more locations that need to be compared. For example, a very classic problem is you are using 2 different labels for a button that does the same thing. You are using search in one button and find in another button. This can create confusion for the user. So it's a problem that compares two different locations. You can have problem with the overall UI structure, in terms of alignments, in terms of layout of the page. Or you can have problem because something is missing. Okay. One of the important thing, and you will try to also to define some tasks in the assignment 2, is define tasks to conduct the evaluation. So what is a task? In general, a task can be defined as a goal together with some ordered set of actions. So a task is the set of structured activities, high-level actions that are required to achieve a goal. So a task says what a person wants to do, not how, and this is important. You should not include any hints on how to perform the task with your interface in the task definition. Otherwise, you are influencing the evaluator. And typically, you can have a mix of tasks with different complexity. You can have simple tasks that are common or introductory, moderate tasks, and complex tasks. Let's skip this example. Let's focus on an example. So let's suppose we are evaluating the Uber mobile application. I've tried to report here some tasks to guide an evaluation of this kind of application. So the simple task could be signaling for a ride. Is this a task in your opinion? Is it simple? Yeah, it's a task. It describes a goal that can be achieved with multiple actions, probably. We are not saying how to do the task in the task definition, right? And it's simple because it's probably the main task of the application, right? So it's the main feature. Moderate task. Reach out to the driver to get a forgotten object. Yeah, it's written there. These are all good tasks, so it's a task. Why is it moderate?
Because it's not the common usage.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably less common. It probably requires some more steps to do, and so it can be classified as moderate. And then the complex task, become a driver for Uber. This is clearly more complex with respect to the other one, also because there are also
Processing of data, right?
yeah,
Processing of data should be done. The collection through the registration form and processing.
you mean for the complex task?
Yes.
Yes, there are multiple steps, and so it's clearly more complex. Here instead are some bad tasks for the same application. Open the app and tap on travel. Is it a task, and why is it bad?
Because it does not represent a goal.
It doesn't represent a goal, yes, but here the main problem is that you are influencing the evaluator. You are saying to the evaluator, open the app, and then you will see a button with a travel label, click on that button. But what if travel is not the appropriate label? You cannot evaluate this if you are introducing this kind of bias in the task. Another example of bad task. Go into your account settings, check the messages, and then send a present. Again, it's probably a bad task because, yes, in this case, it's difficult to understand the goal. There are three different things. and you are also saying what to do in the task. So probably is not a good example of a task.
Can we call this task like send a present?
Yes, this could be a task. If we divide these tasks into 3 different, yes, check the messages could be a task. Probably also send a present. Go into your account settings. It's probably not a task because it's difficult to understand the goal. Okay, again, having a set of good tasks allows you to ask your experts to evaluate the interface without biases. So how many evaluators do we typically need? 3 to 5. And this is a validated number, so Nielsen conducted some experiments to understand how many experts are needed to find most of the usability problems in a user interface. So they created a UI with some predefined usability problems within the interface. And then Nielsen asked evaluators to perform an heuristic evaluation and collected the number of violations found by those experts. Different of course, you can see this in the chart. Here are the evaluators, 19 evaluators, and here are the 16 usability problems included in the interface. So we can see that different evaluators find different problems. So this magic number cannot be 1. But there are some evaluators that find more problems than others. And we can see that with 3 to 5 evaluators, we are able in a way to cover almost all the usability problems. So this relationship between number of evaluators and problems found is not linear. It follows this curve. So you can see here that with 5 evaluators, you are typically able to find most of the problems. And if you increase the number of evaluators, you are gaining maybe 5–10%. Okay? But if you consider the costs of recruiting experts, we can see that it's probably better to stop here to 3 to 5. So it's better to, if you have 10 experts, it's better maybe to conduct 2 different heuristic evaluations. So first one, then I redesign something, and then I conduct another evaluation. Okay, as I said before, we look for violations, and for each violation we assign a severity rating. Of course, the design team need to allocate most resources to fix the most serious problems. And so the expert, in a way, suggests designers what are the high priority problems. So this severity is typically a combination of 3 factors. The frequency with which the problem occurs. Is it common? Is it in one button only, or is it for all the buttons in the UI? The impact, is it easy to overcome or is it difficult to overcome? So with this problem, can I continue using the application, or is this problem blocking me? And persistence, is it one time or will it occur many times to users? So analyzing these 3 factors, the expert should decide a severity rating for each violation. And this is the scale suggested by Nielsen. From 0 to 4, where 0 is no problem. I don't agree this is a usability problem at all. And this is clearly used just in the consensus phase. So there are 3 experts. One of the experts identified a problem, and the other experts are saying, no, this is 0 for me, it's not a problem. In the individual phase, you typically use values from 1 to 4, where 1 is cosmetic problem only. So it's a cosmetic problem, need not to be fixed unless there is extra time for the design team. Minor usability problem, low priority. Major usability problem, important to fix, this should be a high priority. And usability catastrophe, so imperative to fix before the product can be released. And then again, in the consensus phase, these severity ratings from one evaluator should be merged, discussed among the design team. You can discuss and agree on a consensus ranking, or you can also just compute the average of the ratings. Okay. When experts reach a consensus, they produce a joint report, and this report is given to the design team. And typically what happens is that there is a debriefing session with the design team in which experts discuss the report with the design team and suggest possible improvements to avoid the violations included in the report. Yes, you can skip this. These are the 10 usability heuristics proposed by Nielsen. They are very popular. We don't have time to explore them in detail, and it's also out of scope for this course. But if you want to evaluate the usability of your interfaces, these are the references, okay? There are multiple guidelines and tutorials online to follow these 10 usability heuristics. Again, you can also apply your own heuristics, and there are several examples also in the literature that adopts this method of heuristic evaluation with dedicated heuristics. And this is, for example, an example by Microsoft Research that developed their guidelines for human-AI interaction. I don't know if some of you have already attended the course Human-AI Interaction. No, it will happen next year. These are guidelines for supporting a good interaction between users and AI, proposed by Microsoft Research. And in this paper, they actually used these heuristics in a heuristic evaluation. So it's a good example of applying this technique with a dedicated set of heuristics. And yes, here are some examples of these heuristics. Make clear how well the system can do what it can do. But this is again related to human-AI interaction. So it's probably out of scope. And they actually asked some experts to apply, evaluate these heuristics on existing products. Any questions? Any? Okay, I think we can take a break now. And then at 3 p.m. we will start the second assignment. Yes, I will introduce it at 3 p.m.